I never believed a toy could disturb my sleep, let alone terrify me. But everything changed when I brought home a small, wide-eyed creature called Labubu. It was meant to be harmless, just another collectible to decorate my shelf. Yet what happened after the first few nights convinced me that something was wrong with it, something beyond explanation. I bought it from a store that specialized in limited edition figures. The design was odd, almost mischievous, with a crooked smile and eyes too big for its face. Friends teased me, saying it looked creepy, but I laughed it off. I placed it on my nightstand beside my bed, thinking nothing of it. The first night was uneventful. I fell asleep with the toy's unsettling grin facing me. When morning came, I shrugged off the faint sense of unease. By the second night, however, I woke suddenly around 3 in the morning. My room was silent, but I could have sworn I heard a faint giggle. It wasn't a sound outside, and it wasn't from my phone or computer. It came from somewhere near my bed. I sat up, scanning the room. My eyes landed on Labubu. It was still in its place, but something about the way it sat didn't feel right. I told myself I was imagining things and forced myself back to sleep. The third night confirmed my worst fears. At around the same time, 3 in the morning, I woke up again. This time the giggle was clearer, louder. It wasn't joyful laughter, but a twisted, childlike chuckle, rising and falling unnaturally. My dog, who always slept at the foot of my bed, lifted his head and growled softly, staring directly at the nightstand. His eyes locked on the toy. I turned on the lamp, heart racing. Labubu was there, grinning the same eternal grin, but it no longer faced forward. Instead, its body seemed turned slightly toward me, as if it had shifted during the night. I hadn't touched it. My hands trembled as I picked it up. Plastic felt unusually warm. That night, I placed it inside my closet, shutting the door firmly. My dog settled down immediately, curling up at my feet as if nothing had happened. The silence that followed was almost a relief. But at 3:12 a.m., I heard it again, muffled, faint but unmistakable, a laugh coming from the closet. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. By morning, I had decided to get rid of it. I wrapped the toy in a towel, shoved it into a box, and carried it to my car. I drove several miles to a donation center and left it there without explanation. I thought it was over. But that night, as I lay in bed, I felt something watching me. I turned toward the closet door. It was closed, yet my chest tightened. I forced myself to close my eyes, but then there it was again. That same broken laughter. Shut up. Turned on the light and stared at the nightstand. Empty. Nothing was there, yet the sound grew louder, echoing around the room, fading only when dawn finally broke. I never saw the toy again. But to this day, every once in a while, when the clock strikes 3, I wake up to the sound of faint giggles, circling the edge of my bed. And each time, I swear it feels like something small is sitting in the shadows, grinning, waiting. I've always been a collector. Ever since I was a teenager, I've had a fascination with toys, figurines, and rare models. It wasn't about playing with them, it was about owning a piece of something strange, limited, almost forbidden. Over time, my apartment filled with shelves of carefully arranged items. Among all of them, my most prized possessions were the Labubu figures. There was something about their design, those wide, mischievous eyes, the crooked little teeth that drew me in. People said they looked unsettling, but that was exactly why I loved them. One of them, in particular, was my favorite. A rare edition, imported from overseas, sealed in perfect condition when I bought it. I placed it in the center of my glass display cabinet, surrounded by the others. Every night before bed, I admired the lineup, proud of the collection I had built. But one night I came home from work and immediately sensed something was wrong. The cabinet looked off. At first I couldn't pinpoint what had changed. Then I realized the centerpiece Labubu was gone. The lock on the cabinet was still secure. The key was on my keychain, which hadn't left my pocket. I stared at the empty space, my chest tightening. I searched the entire apartment under furniture, behind books, even in the trash, nothing. It had simply vanished. Days passed. I tried to tell myself I had misplaced it, though I knew that was impossible. That cabinet had never been opened without the key. But then, exactly 7 nights later, something happened that shook me to my core. I woke around 3 in the morning to a faint sound like glass creaking. My room was dark, but my eyes adjusted enough to see the display cabinet across the room. Its door was slightly open. My breath caught in my throat. I hadn't touched it in days. I got out of bed cautiously, approaching it with my phone's flashlight. And there it was, the missing Labubu. Back in its spot, only different. The figure was covered in scratches. Deep, uneven lines marred its plastic body, especially across the face and hands, as if it had been dragged across rough ground. The sight made me feel sick. Where had it gone? And more importantly, how had it come back? The next morning, I checked my security camera footage. I had installed a small camera facing my shelves, mostly for peace of mind. But when I tried to view the recordings from the night before, I found nothing. The footage cut out at exactly midnight and resumed at dawn. No error, no corruption, just a blank gap. From that night onward, I started to notice more changes, small at first. A figure slightly turned when I woke up. Faint tapping sound near the cabinet, like fingernails against glass. Each morning, the Labubu sat closer to the front of the shelf, pressed against the inside of the cabinet door, its wide eyes staring straight out at my bed. One night, I tried an experiment. I locked the cabinet tightly and placed duct tape across the door. I even stacked heavy books in front of it, told myself it was ridiculous, but I needed to know. At 2:47 a.m., I woke to the sound of scratching. Slow, steady, deliberate. The sound of something dragging against glass from inside. My heart pounded so violently I thought I might pass out. I forced myself to look across the room. Even in the dim light, I could see the shadows shifting inside the cabinet. Something was moving in there. The scratching grew louder, more frantic. My instincts screamed at me to run, but I couldn't move. I lay frozen, drenched in cold sweat, staring until the noise suddenly stopped. The silence was worse than the scratching. When morning came, I found the cabinet exactly as I had left it, the tape intact, the books untouched. But the Labubu had moved again this time, pressed against the very corner of the glass. Its face tilted upward, almost as if it were smiling directly at me. That was the last straw. Within a week, I packed my belongings and moved out of that apartment. I left the cabinet behind, locked and sealed, never returning for it. Sometimes, late at night when I'm alone in my new place, I swear I still hear it, the faint scrape of plastic claws against glass, as though it followed me. Children have imaginary friends. That's what I told myself when my 5-year-old son began whispering to his new toy. He had begged for it for weeks. Labubu doll we found in a shop while traveling. At first I thought it was ugly, unsettling even, with its wide grin and enormous eyes. But my son loved it instantly. From the moment we brought it home, he carried it everywhere. He propped it next to him at the dinner table, tucked it beside him in bed, and whispered to it constantly. At first it was adorable, just a child lost in imagination. But soon I realized something wasn't right. Late one night I woke to his voice. He was speaking softly, rhythmically, as though in conversation. I walked down the hall and peeked into his room. He sat on the floor in the dark, facing Labubu, which leaned against the wall. "Yes," my son said. "I'll tell you. Don't scare Mommy." My blood ran cold. I flicked on the light, startling him. He clutched the toy protectively. "Go back to bed, Mommy," he whispered. "He doesn't like when you listen." The way he said he made my stomach twist. Over the next week, his behavior grew stranger. His vocabulary shifted, his tone darker. Once, I heard him mutter, "Secrets taste better when you keep them in the dark." Another time, he whispered, "She won't believe us until she sees the eyes." I confronted him, but he only smiled and said, "He told me not to tell you." By now, my sleep was restless. Every night, I woke around 3 a.m., always with the feeling of being watched. Shadows seemed heavier, thicker. And every time I looked toward his room, I felt dread pressing down on me. 3 nights later, the truth revealed itself. I woke again at 3 a.m. and noticed my son's door was slightly ajar. I crept closer and peered inside. His room was pitch black, but too faint. Glowing orbs stared back at me from the corner. They weren't reflections. They weren't tricks of the light. They were eyes bright, unblinking, set exactly where the toy sat. I gasped and flicked the switch. The glow vanished instantly. My son sat smiling, clutching Labubu tightly. "See," he whispered. "He doesn't like when you interrupt." That morning, I begged my husband to throw the toy away. He laughed, saying it was just a child's imagination, but I couldn't ignore it anymore. While my husband was at work, I took the toy outside, shoved it deep into the trash bin, and slammed the lid shut. Relief washed over me. That night, my son cried inconsolably. "He's not gone," he sobbed. He promised he'd come back. I didn't sleep. And at 3 a.m., I heard the sound of plastic scraping along the hallway floor. My heart nearly stopped. I opened my bedroom door. The hall was empty, except for Labubu, sitting upright against the wall, its wide grin fixed on me. I screamed, grabbed it, and drove it miles away, tossing it into a donation bin. When I returned, my son was already asleep, as if nothing had happened. The next night was calm. For the first time in weeks, he slept soundly. But at 3 a.m., I woke to a familiar dread. Something pressed heavily in the room, like invisible eyes watching me. I turned slowly toward the foot of the bed. In the faint moonlight, 2 glowing orbs stared back. And then, from the darkness beside me, my son's whisper, "See, Mommy?" He came back.